Ambassador Crix adjusted his ceremonial robes as the human delegation entered the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council. 3 years had passed since humanity's discovery, and today marked their formal introduction to the greater galactic community. As the Council's chief military assessor, Crix had reviewed countless species capabilities, but the humans remained an enigma. The human delegation was small, just 5 individuals led by a woman named Emma Torres, their Secretary of Interstellar Affairs. They carried no visible weapons, wore simple dark suits, and moved with a casual confidence that seemed almost dismissive of the grandeur surrounding them. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Torres began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. We come before you today not as conquerors or supplicants, but as neighbors seeking understanding and peaceful coexistence. Crix's mandibles clicked softly in amusement. Every species said similar words during their introduction. What mattered was the military assessment that would follow. He activated his holographic display, preparing to catalog humanity's weapons, fleet strength, and tactical capabilities. We understand, Torres continued, that membership in this council requires transparency regarding our defensive capabilities. We are prepared to provide this information, though we must note that our military doctrine differs significantly from what you may expect. The Thrakari representative, General Voss, leaned forward in his hover throne. His species had conquered 17 systems before joining the council, and he took particular interest in evaluating new military threats. Secretary Torres, our records indicate your species has engaged in continuous warfare throughout your recorded history. Yet your fleet appears modest. How do you explain this discrepancy? Torres exchanged a glance with her military advisor, Admiral Blake. The older man's weathered face remained impassive as he stood to address the assembly. Honored council members, Blake began, humanity has indeed experienced extensive conflict throughout our history. This experience has taught us that the most effective military strategy is one that never needs to be employed. We have structured our forces around deterrence rather than conquest. Crix's specialized organs detected elevated stress hormones from several council members. The Vorkani delegate was unconsciously gripping his seat, while the crystalline Nexari representative's light patterns shifted to defensive configurations. Something in the human's tone had triggered deep survival instincts across multiple species. Perhaps, suggested Council Prime Orden, we should proceed with the standard military demonstration. This will allow all members to properly assess humanity's capabilities and determine appropriate fleet positioning agreements. The human delegation conferred quietly among themselves for several moments. Crix noticed their body language. No deference, no anxiety, just the casual discussion of colleagues deciding on lunch plans. It was profoundly unsettling to witness such nonchalance when facing the combined military might of 47 star systems. Torres nodded to her team and addressed the council once more. We consent to the demonstration, with one stipulation. We request that all council fleets maintain a minimum distance of 10 light-years from the designated test system. Our weapons have considerable range. The request sent ripples of confusion through the assembly. No species had ever requested such an extensive safety perimeter. Even the Mektari, whose weapons could crack planets, required only a single light-year buffer zone. 10 light-years seems excessive, General Voss observed. Our own demonstrations require minimal spacing. Surely human weapons cannot. General, Admiral Blake interrupted gently. With respect, we have found that caution serves everyone's interests. We have prepared a small demonstration that should adequately display our capabilities without causing undue alarm. As the council session concluded and preparations began for the demonstration, Crix found himself reviewing humanity's initial contact reports with growing unease. A species that had spent millennia in constant warfare, yet approached the galaxy's greatest military powers with casual confidence. A civilization that requested unprecedented safety margins for what they termed a small demonstration. Most disturbing of all was the phrase Admiral Blake had used. Caution serves everyone's interests. Not humanity's interests, everyone's interests, as if the humans were protecting the council from themselves. 3 days later, Crix stood aboard the council observation vessel Eternal Vigil, positioned exactly 10 light-years from the designated test system of Kepler 442. The system contained only a single gas giant and its moons, deemed expendable for military demonstrations. Around him, representatives from all 47 member species crowded the observation deck, their attention focused on the massive holographic display showing the test zone. The human demonstration fleet had arrived precisely on schedule. A single vessel. "This must be an error," muttered General Voss, his scarred features twisted in confusion. "Where is their battle group? Their support fleet?" The human vessel, designated UES Prometheus, was unremarkable by galactic standards. Roughly 800 meters in length, sleek but not imposing. It bore no visible weapon arrays, no massive gun batteries that characterized most military vessels. To Crix's trained eye, it appeared more like an oversized cargo hauler than a warship. Ambassador Torres stood calmly beside the display, seemingly unperturbed by the whispers and skeptical glances from the assembled delegates. Admiral Blake monitored, a small handheld device, occasionally nodding to his subordinates. Secretary Torres, Council Prime Orden finally spoke, his voice carefully neutral. "We had expected a more comprehensive display of your military capabilities. This single vessel hardly seems representative of a species' full arsenal." Torres smiled, and something in that expression made Crix's blood chill. "Prime Orden, we felt it would be inappropriate to bring our full fleet for what is, after all, merely a demonstration. The Prometheus carries a single weapon system that should adequately showcase our approach to military engagement." On the display, the Prometheus had positioned itself near the system's outer edge, approximately 40 astronomical units from the gas giant Kepler 442b. At this distance, the planet appeared as little more than a bright dot on their sensors. "Beginning demonstration in 30 seconds, Admiral Blake announced. "All vessels confirm minimum safe distance?" A chorus of confirmations echoed through the observation deck. Several species had positioned their fleets even further back, unwilling to trust human assurances about safety margins. 15 seconds, Blake continued. "Target acquired, weapon systems armed." Crix activated his most sensitive recording equipment. Whatever the humans were about to demonstrate, he wanted complete documentation. His species had survived as military assessors by understanding every possible threat, and something about humanity's casual confidence suggested they were about to witness something unprecedented. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, firing. For a moment, nothing happened. The Prometheus remained motionless in space, showing no visible discharge or energy signature. The gas giant continued its lazy rotation, unchanged and seemingly untouched. Then, the readings began. Crix's instruments detected a massive gravitational anomaly forming near Kepler 442b's core. The gas giant's rotation began to accelerate, its atmospheric bands stretching and distorting. Within minutes, the planet's structural integrity began failing as tidal forces tore it apart from within. "What weapon causes planetary disruption?" "From 40 AU?" whispered the Nexari delegate, her crystalline form pulsing with agitated light patterns. Admiral Blake consulted his handheld device with the same casual attention one might give to checking the time. "Artificially generated micro-black hole, delivered via quantum entanglement tunnel. Precise mass calculation allows for controlled gravitational collapse. The effect is temporary, approximately 4 hours until the black hole evaporates via Hawking radiation." The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as Kepler 442b, a gas giant with nearly twice Jupiter's mass, was systematically torn apart by invisible forces. The spectacle was mesmerizing and terrifying, a planet dying without any visible cause, no energy beams or missile strikes, just the fundamental forces of physics turned into a weapon. "The range?" General Voss asked hoarsely. "Theoretically unlimited," Torres replied matter-of-factly. "Quantum entanglement isn't constrained by light speed limitations. We could target any location in the galaxy instantaneously, provided we have accurate coordinates." Crix felt his assessment protocols struggling to process this information. A weapon that could destroy planets from any distance instantly, without warning or visible attack signature. It violated every principle of military doctrine he had ever studied. "How many of your vessels carry such weapons?" Council Prime Orden's voice was barely above a whisper. Admiral Blake and Secretary Torres exchanged another of their casual glances. "All of them," Blake replied simply. "It's standard armament. This particular unit is considered obsolete by our current military standards. We retired it from active service 18 months ago." The observation deck fell into absolute silence. 47 species, representing the combined military might of half the galaxy, struggled to comprehend what they had just witnessed. A retired, obsolete weapon had casually eliminated a planet from an impossible distance. "There's more," Torres added gently, almost apologetically. "The demonstration isn't quite finished." The debris field that had been Kepler 442b continued expanding outward, chunks of frozen gas and metallic core material spreading across millions of kilometers. Crix's instruments tracked every fragment, documenting the complete annihilation of a celestial body that had existed for billions of years until 37 minutes ago. "The secondary demonstration," Admiral Blake announced, "will showcase our defensive capabilities." Defensive capabilities. Crix's mandibles twitched involuntarily. If their obsolete offensive weapons could destroy planets instantaneously from galactic distances, what did human defensive systems look like? "We've prepared a small fleet engagement scenario," Torres explained to the stunned assembly. "Admiral Blake will command a single human vessel against a simulated enemy force." The holographic display shifted to show a new formation materializing near the debris field. Crix recognized the vessels immediately. 12 Thrakari heavy cruisers, each one a kilometer-long testament to military engineering. These weren't human ships. They were actual Thrakari vessels from General Voss's own fleet. "General Voss," Admiral Blake addressed the Thrakari representative directly, "we requested permission to borrow some of your vessels for this demonstration. Your crews have been safely evacuated to observation positions. I hope you don't mind the temporary use of your ships." General Voss's four eyes narrowed in suspicion. "Those vessels represent the finest military technology my species has ever produced. Each one could level a planet's surface within hours. How exactly do you plan to—" He stopped mid-sentence as another human vessel materialized near the Thrakari formation. This one was even smaller than the Prometheus, barely 400 meters long and completely unarmed by any visual standards. "The UES Shepherd," Torres announced. "Our newest defensive platform. It carries no weapons, as defensive doctrine requires only protection systems." Crix adjusted his sensors to maximum sensitivity, determined to understand whatever was about to unfold. The Shepherd approached the formation of Thrakari cruisers, taking position directly in their center like a minnow swimming among sharks. "General Voss, would you be so kind as to authorize your vessels to engage the Shepherd with full weapons?" Admiral Blake requested politely. "Please don't hold back. Our defensive systems require maximum stress testing to properly demonstrate their capabilities." The Thrakari general's scarred features contorted with disbelief. "You want 12 heavy cruisers to fire on your single unarmed vessel?" "If you would be so kind." General Voss hesitated for a long moment, then activated his command console. Across the display, 12 massive warships turned their weapon arrays toward the tiny human vessel floating defensively among them. "Engaging human vessel with full military authorization," General Voss announced grimly. "May your crew find honor in death." "Our crew thanks you for the sentiment," Admiral Blake replied cheerfully. "But death won't be necessary today." The Thrakari cruisers opened fire simultaneously. Plasma cannons, kinetic projectiles, and fusion missiles created a devastating light show, as enough firepower to sterilize a continent focused on the Shepherd. The human vessel vanished within a sphere of destructive energy that registered off the scale of Crix's instruments. When the weapon's discharge cleared, the Shepherd remained exactly where it had been, completely undamaged and apparently unaffected by the assault. "Interesting," Admiral Blake commented, studying his readings. "Our shields registered approximately 0.3% stress loading. General Voss, would it be possible to repeat the attack? Perhaps with sustained fire this time?" For the next 20 minutes, 12 of the galaxy's most powerful warships poured continuous fire into the small human vessel. Plasma temperatures that could melt battleship armor, kinetic rounds traveling at significant fractions of light speed, exotic matter warheads that collapsed local space-time. Nothing affected the Shepherd. The human vessel sat motionless in the center of absolute destruction, its shields invisible and apparently impenetrable. "How?" General Voss finally asked, his voice hollow with defeat. "Quantum field manipulation," Torres explained casually. "Our defensive screens exist in a parallel, dimensional framework. Attacks pass through normal space while our vessel remains protected in quantum foam. The energy has nowhere to go, so it simply dissipates harmlessly. Crick's assessment protocols had completely shut down. His specialized brain, evolved over millions of years to analyze military threats, could not process what he was witnessing. A species with instantaneous planet-killing weapons and impenetrable defenses. A civilization that could eliminate any target anywhere in the galaxy while remaining completely invulnerable to retaliation. "There's one more element to our demonstration," Admiral Blake announced. "Our mobility systems." The Shepard vanished. One moment it was floating among the Thrakari cruisers. The next, it simply ceased to exist. No energy signature, no dimensional rift, no trace that it had ever been there. "Current position," Torres noted, consulting a small device. "Approximately 4,000 light-years from here. Transit time. Instantaneous. Our vessels can appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning, engage targets, and withdraw before enemy forces can respond." The assembled delegates sat in stunned silence, trying to comprehend the implications. A military force that could strike anywhere instantly, destroy anything effortlessly, and could not be harmed or even detected until they chose to reveal themselves. "Why?" Council Prime Orden asked quietly. "Why develop such overwhelming capabilities?" Torres turned to face the assembly, and for the first time, her expression showed something other than diplomatic pleasantry. Something darker and infinitely sad. "Because," she said simply, "we learned that in war, there is no second place." The observation deck remained silent for long minutes after Torres's statement. Crix found himself studying the human delegation, with new eyes, noting details he had previously overlooked. The way Admiral Blake's hands bore faint scars from what appeared to be weapons handling. The slight tension in Torres's posture that spoke of someone accustomed to life-or-death decisions. The quiet alertness of their security detail. Men and women who moved with the fluid readiness of veteran soldiers. These were not diplomats playing at military matters. These were warriors who had learned to speak the language of peace. "Secretary Torres," Council Prime Orden finally spoke, his voice carefully controlled. "Your demonstration has been illuminating. Perhaps you could elaborate on your species' military philosophy. Help us understand how such capabilities developed?" Torres nodded to Admiral Blake, who activated a small projector. The holographic display shifted to show a blue-green planet, Earth, rotating slowly in space. "Our homeworld," Blake began, "is approximately 12,742 kilometers in diameter, with a surface area of 510 million square kilometers. For the past 12,000 years, our species has fought over every meter of it." The display zoomed in, showing continental landmasses covered in a complex web of boundary lines that shifted and changed like living things. "These represent territorial borders throughout human history," Blake continued. "Watch how they change over time." The display accelerated, showing millennia of human conflict compressed into minutes. Borders flowed like water, expanding and contracting as empires rose and fell. Red indicators marked major conflicts, thousands of them, scattered across every continent and era. "By our year 1945, Blake said, pausing the display, human weapons had reached the point where we could destroy our entire species within hours. We had created bombs that could level cities, poison that could kill millions, diseases that could eliminate entire populations." Crix noticed that several council members were unconsciously leaning away from the human delegation. "The logical response," Torres continued, "would have been to limit such weapons, to prevent their use through treaties and agreements. Instead, we built more. Bigger ones. Better ones. Within 50 years, we possessed enough nuclear weapons to sterilize our planet dozens of times over." The display showed missile silos, submarine fleets, and bomber aircraft. Tens of thousands of nuclear weapons pointed at humanity's own cities. "Why?" asked the Nexari delegate, her crystalline form pulsing with confused light patterns. "Why? Build weapons to destroy yourselves?" Admiral Blake's expression grew grim. "Because we understood a fundamental truth about warfare. The only way to prevent a war is to make victory impossible for everyone involved. We called it mutually assured destruction. If any nation attacked with nuclear weapons, every nation would be destroyed in retaliation." "It worked," Torres added. "For nearly 2 centuries, no major power dared attack another directly. The consequences were too terrible to contemplate." The display shifted again, showing humanity's expansion into space. First tentative steps to nearby planets, then rapid colonization throughout their solar system. But space changed the equation, Blake continued. Planets separated by light years couldn't maintain the same mutually assured destruction. An enemy could strike Earth and escape before retaliation was possible. Distance became a tactical advantage. Crix began to understand the terrifying logic driving human military development. A species that had survived by making war unwinnable suddenly faced the possibility that distance might make victory achievable again. So we adapted, Torres said simply. We developed weapons that could reach any target instantly, anywhere in the galaxy. We built defenses that could protect against any conceivable attack. We created mobility systems that allowed us to appear anywhere without warning. You restored the balance, General Voss observed quietly. Made victory impossible again. Exactly. Admiral Blake nodded. Our entire military doctrine is based on a single principle. War must remain unwinnable for everyone involved. The moment any species believes they can achieve victory without unacceptable losses, conflict becomes inevitable. The holographic display now showed humanity's current military deployments, or rather, the complete lack of them. No battle fleets guarded Earth's borders. No weapons platforms surrounded their colonies. Their military vessels appeared to be scattered randomly throughout space, often alone and far from any strategic positions. "Where are your armies?" asked the Vorkani delegate. "Your battle fleets? Your fortress worlds?" "Everywhere and nowhere," Torres replied. "Our weapons can reach any target instantly. Our defenses work regardless of location. Our vessels can appear anywhere within seconds." Traditional military positioning became irrelevant. Crix's assessment protocols were finally beginning to function again, analyzing the strategic implications. A military force that could not be located, tracked, or engaged. Weapons that could strike without warning from impossible distances. Defenses that made retaliation meaningless. "You've made yourselves the ultimate deterrent," he realized aloud. "Any species that attacks humanity faces certain annihilation, while humanity remains completely invulnerable." "More than that," Admiral Blake corrected. "Any species that attacks anyone faces certain annihilation. We don't just protect ourselves, we guarantee that large-scale warfare is impossible for everyone." The full scope of humanity's strategy became clear. They hadn't just developed overwhelming military capabilities. They had positioned themselves as the galaxy's enforcer of peace, making war too dangerous for any species to contemplate. "This is why you requested membership in the Galactic Council," Council Prime Orden said slowly. "Not for protection or trade benefits, but to formally establish your role as peacekeepers." Torres smiled, and this time the expression carried genuine warmth instead of diplomatic courtesy. "We prefer the term referees. Our goal isn't to rule the galaxy, it's to ensure that no one else can either." The implications of humanity's revelations settled over the observation deck like a heavy blanket. Crix watched as representatives from 47 species grappled with the reality of their new galactic neighbors. A civilization that had essentially declared themselves the final arbiters of interstellar conflict. "Secretary Torres," the crystalline Nexari delegate spoke, her light patterns shifting to deep amber configurations that indicated serious concern. "While we appreciate your commitment to peace, surely you understand how unsettling this is for the rest of us. You've positioned humanity as judge and jury over all galactic conflicts." Torres nodded thoughtfully. "We understand your concerns completely, which is why we're here today, submitting ourselves to council oversight and formal treaties. We don't want to be galactic dictators any more than you want us to be." Admiral Blake activated his projector again, showing a new display, detailed schematics of human military installations, fleet deployments, and weapon specifications. "We're prepared to provide complete transparency regarding our capabilities," Blake announced. "Every vessel location, every weapon system, every defensive installation. Full disclosure." General Voss leaned forward, studying the technical readouts with obvious fascination and growing horror. "These power requirements. The energy output of your smallest weapons exceeds our largest power plants. How do you contain such forces?" "Carefully," Blake replied with dark humor. "And with multiple redundant safety systems. We learned early that weapons capable of destroying planets can just as easily destroy the species that builds them." The display showed incident reports, accidents and near misses from humanity's military development. Entire research facilities lost to containment failures. Test ranges that had become permanent dead zones. Scientists killed by their own creations. The price of ultimate weapons, Torres said quietly, is ultimate responsibility. Every human child learns about the Prometheus incident in their first year of school. She gestured to the display, which showed a barren crater where a city had once stood. New Geneva, population 12 million. A single researcher made a calculation error during a quantum field test. The entire city vanished in 0.3 seconds, along with everyone in it. That was educational for our species. Crix felt his mandibles clicking involuntarily, a stress response he hadn't experienced in decades. The casual way Torres discussed the accidental annihilation of 12 million people spoke to a species that had learned to live with unimaginable destructive power. This is precisely our concern, the Vorkani delegate interjected. You've developed weapons so powerful that accidents become genocides. What happens when your calculation errors affect other species? Admiral Blake's expression turned deadly serious. That's exactly why we built our defense systems first, before expanding. Beyond our solar system, every human vessel carries enough defensive capability to contain any conceivable weapon malfunction. We cannot afford accidents when other species are involved. The display shifted to show defensive protocols, elaborate containment systems, automated safety shutdowns, and fail-safe mechanisms that would activate if human weapons threatened non-human populations. We spent 3 centuries perfecting our defensive technologies before we ever left Earth's solar system, Torres explained. Our first priority was ensuring that our weapons could never accidentally harm innocent populations. Council Prime Orden studied the technical specifications with growing amazement. These safety systems, they're more complex than our most advanced weapons. You've invested more in preventing accidents than most species invest in their entire military. Because the cost of failure is too high, Blake replied simply. When your weapons can eliminate star systems, 99.99% reliability isn't good enough. We require absolute certainty. The assembled delegates began to grasp the full scope of humanity's burden. Not only had they developed overwhelming military power, but they had taken responsibility for ensuring that power could never be misused, even accidentally. There's another aspect to consider, Torres continued. Our defensive capabilities extend beyond protecting ourselves. Watch this. The display showed a simulation, a hypothetical conflict between 2 council member species, with their fleets engaged in typical interstellar warfare. Suddenly, human vessels appeared throughout the battle zone, their defensive screens extending to encompass both fleets. In any military conflict, Torres explained, human vessels can appear instantly and extend our defensive fields to protect all participants. Weapons fire passes harmlessly through our screens. Combat becomes impossible. To continue. You can stop wars by making them ineffective, General Voss realized. Exactly. We don't need to destroy aggressive fleets. We simply make their weapons useless. Eventually, they get tired of shooting at targets they can't damage and go home. Crix's military assessment protocols were struggling to categorize this approach. It wasn't conquest or destruction. It was the complete negation of warfare itself. Humanity had made violence obsolete by making it impossible. But what about ground conflicts? Asked the Thrakari representative. Planetary invasions? Occupation? Forces? Admiral Blake smiled grimly. Quantum entanglement tunnels work both ways. We can transport defending forces instantly to any threatened location. Any invasion force suddenly finds themselves outnumbered by defenders who appeared without warning. The display showed tactical simulations, occupation forces surrounded by defenders who had materialized around them, supply lines cut by troops who could appear anywhere instantly, invasion fleets finding their target planets protected by defensive screens they couldn't penetrate. Ground warfare becomes as impossible as space combat, Torres concluded. We've eliminated the tactical advantages that make aggression viable. The observation deck fell silent again as the assembled representatives contemplated the new galactic reality. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy. They had made conquest itself impossible for everyone, including themselves. This is why you avoid war, Council Prime Orden said finally. Not because you fear losing, but because your victory would be so complete, so overwhelming, that it would destroy the very concept of interstellar balance. Torres nodded slowly. When you possess the power to end all conflicts instantly and permanently, using that power becomes the end of diplomacy forever. We prefer to keep our weapons as a threat rather than a reality. The weight of humanity's revelation continued to settle over the assembled delegates. Crix found himself recalculating everything he thought he knew about galactic power structures. Traditional military assessments had become meaningless when faced with a species that could end all warfare while remaining invulnerable to retaliation. Secretary Torres, the elderly Altarian delegate, spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had witnessed 3 centuries of galactic politics. You speak of using your power as a threat rather than reality. But threats only work if they are occasionally carried out. How do we know your species will actually intervene when necessary? Torres exchanged a meaningful glance with Admiral Blake before responding. We have intervened, Ambassador Veltar. 3 times in the past 18 months, in fact. The holographic display shifted to show stellar maps marking 3 different systems, each highlighted in amber warning colors. The Cronin-Stellari border dispute, Blake began, indicating the first system. Both species had mobilized full battle fleets and were preparing for a war that would have consumed 17 systems and killed billions of civilians. The display showed massive fleet formations, hundreds of warships from 2 different species facing each other across a disputed star system. We appeared simultaneously at both fleet positions, Torres continued. No threats, no demands, no communications. We simply extended our defensive screens around both fleets and waited. For how long? General Voss asked. 6 weeks, Blake replied. Both sides fired continuously at each other for 6 weeks. Every shot was absorbed by our screens. Eventually, their ammunition supplies ran low, and they had to talk instead of shoot. The display showed the gradual de-escalation as both fleets, unable to damage each other or the human vessels protecting their enemies, finally agreed to negotiations. The second intervention was more direct, Torres admitted. The hegemony of Vex had launched a war of extermination against the peaceful collective of Mir-Dan. Crix's mandibles clicked in recognition. The Mir-Dan were renowned throughout the galaxy as absolute pacifists, a species that had never developed weapons and relied entirely on diplomatic solutions to conflicts. The Vex considered this a military opportunity, Blake said grimly. An entire species that couldn't fight back. They began systematic planetary bombardments. The display showed the horrific reality. Vex warships reducing peaceful Mir-Dan cities to rubble while the inhabitants fled helplessly. We couldn't extend defensive screens around entire planets, Torres explained, so we took a more direct approach. You destroyed the Vex fleet? General Voss guessed. We relocated it, Blake corrected. Every Vex warship, every soldier, every weapon, transported instantly to an empty system approximately 2,000 light-years away. No casualties, no destruction, just removal. The implications struck the assembled delegates like a physical blow. Humanity could not only destroy enemy forces, they could simply make them disappear, relocating entire military campaigns to empty space where they could harm no one. The Vex spent 3 months trying to return to Mir-Dan space, Torres continued. Every time they approached the border, we relocated them again. Eventually, they accepted that genocide was no longer a viable strategy. And the third intervention? Council Prime Orden asked quietly. Blake's expression turned grave. That one was internal. The display showed Earth itself, with human colonies throughout their solar system. But something was wrong. Weapon signatures surrounded several planets, and defensive screens flickered ominously around populated areas. The Terran Liberation Front, Torres explained. A human faction that believed our military superiority gave us the right to conquer and rule the galaxy. They attempted to seize control of our most powerful weapons. Crix felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. The prospect of human military technology in the hands of aggressive extremists was too terrifying to contemplate. The rebellion lasted exactly 47 minutes, Blake said matter-of-factly. We relocated their entire organization to a monitoring facility where they could reconsider their philosophy without access to weapons of mass destruction. You turned your ultimate weapons against your own species? The Nexari delegate asked, her crystal form pulsing with shocked light patterns. Against those who would misuse them, yes, Torres replied firmly. The power to end all warfare comes with the responsibility to prevent its abuse by anyone, including ourselves. The display showed the aftermath, the rebellion's leaders in comfortable but secure facilities. Their followers returned to civilian life after extensive counseling, and the weapons they had attempted to steal secured behind even more elaborate safeguards. This is the price of ultimate power, Blake explained to the assembly. We must police ourselves more strictly than we police others. Any human who threatens to misuse our capabilities faces immediate intervention by their own government. Admiral Blake activated another display, showing humanity's internal security protocols, monitoring systems that tracked every citizen with access to advanced military technology, psychological evaluations conducted regularly on all military personnel, and automated systems that could neutralize threats from within their own ranks. We live under constant surveillance, Torres admitted. Every human with knowledge of our true capabilities is monitored continuously for signs of aggressive tendencies or psychological instability. It's the only way to ensure our power is never misused. The assembled delegates began to understand the true cost of humanity's position. They had not only made themselves responsible for galactic peace, they had surrendered their own freedom to ensure that responsibility was never betrayed. You've made yourselves prisoners of your own power, Council Prime Orden observed. Willing prisoners, Torres corrected. Because the alternative, allowing ultimate weapons to fall into the wrong hands, is unthinkable. General Voss studied the human delegation with new respect. You've solved the fundamental problem of military power. How to ensure that those with the greatest ability to cause harm are the least likely to use it. We've tried, Blake replied. Whether we've truly succeeded, that remains to be seen. Power corrupts, and ultimate power corrupts ultimately. We can only hope that our safeguards and our commitment to peace prove stronger than the temptation to use what we've built. The observation deck fell into contemplative silence as the full scope of humanity's situation became clear. They had achieved ultimate military superiority only to discover that such power came with ultimate responsibility, not just to the galaxy, but to themselves. The Galactic Council's emergency session had lasted 14 hours. Representatives from 47 species debated, argued, and ultimately came to terms with the new reality of galactic politics. Crix had documented every moment, knowing that this day would reshape interstellar civilization forever. Council. Prime Orden called for final statements before the formal vote on humanity's membership application. The chamber, which had buzzed with nervous energy throughout the session, fell into expectant silence. Secretary Torres, Orden began. Before we conclude, the Council requires assurance on one critical point. Your species possesses the power to end all interstellar conflict permanently. What prevents you from simply taking control, imposing peace through force rather than deterrence? Torres stood slowly, and for the first time during the proceedings, she appeared to carry the full weight of her species' burden. When she spoke, her voice held a sadness that resonated through the chamber. Because, Prime Orden, we've learned that peace imposed by force isn't peace at all. It's slavery. We've seen what happens when ultimate power is used to create ultimate order. It destroys the very thing it claims to protect. Admiral Blake activated the display one final time, showing historical records from Earth's past. Images of oppressive regimes, conquered populations, and the inevitable rebellions that followed. Every tyrant in human history believed they were bringing peace to the world, Blake explained. Every conqueror thought they were ending conflict by eliminating opposition. They all failed because true peace cannot be imposed. It must be chosen. Our power is most effective when it remains unused, Torres continued. The moment we actually enforce galactic peace through military action, we become the very thing we sought to prevent, an aggressive empire that rules through fear. General Voss leaned forward in his hover throne. But you have used your power. The interventions you described were defensive actions, Torres interrupted gently. We protected the innocent, relocated the aggressive, and contained the dangerous. We never conquered, never occupied, never imposed our will on others. There's a critical difference. The Nexari delegate's crystalline form pulsed with contemplative light patterns. You're saying that the restraint to use ultimate power is more important than possessing it. Exactly, Blake confirmed. Any species can develop devastating weapons, given enough time and resources. The real achievement is developing the wisdom never to use them. Crix found himself reviewing his assessment protocols one final time. Traditional military evaluation focused on capability and intent, what a species could do and what they wanted to do. But humanity had introduced a third factor, what they chose not to do, despite being capable of it. The Council faces an unprecedented decision, Prime Orden announced. We must vote on whether to admit a species that could conquer us all, but claims they won't. A civilization that has made warfare obsolete, yet asks to be bound by our laws and treaties. The Altarian delegate, Ambassador Veltar, spoke with the weight of her centuries. In my experience, those who seek power rarely deserve it, while those who deserve power rarely seek it. Humanity asks not for dominion, but for partnership. They offer not conquest, but protection. They've also demonstrated something more valuable than military might, added the Vorkani representative. They've shown restraint, the discipline to possess ultimate power without becoming ultimate rulers. General Voss stood from his hover throne, his scarred features set in grim determination. The Thrakari Empire has conquered 17 systems. We understand the intoxication of military victory, the temptation to use superior force to impose our will. That humanity has resisted this temptation while possessing capabilities beyond our comprehension. This speaks to a wisdom we should embrace, not fear. One by one, species representatives voiced their support. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. 47 species welcoming humanity into the Galactic Council, not despite their overwhelming power, but because of how they chose to wield it. As the formal ceremonies concluded and representatives began departing, Crix approached the human delegation. His assessment report would reshape military doctrine throughout the galaxy, and he needed to understand one final detail. Secretary Torres, he began, his mandibles clicking with nervous energy. My species has served as military assessors for over 2 million years. We've evaluated countless civilizations, cataloged every form of warfare, documented every type of military technology. But I've never encountered anything like humanity. Torres smiled, the expression carrying both warmth and infinite sadness. What troubles you, Ambassador Crix? Your weapons, your defenses, your mobility, all of it defies conventional military logic. But what disturbs me most is your restraint. Species that develop such capabilities inevitably use them. It's a law of nature, as fundamental as gravity. Yet you've chosen differently. How? Admiral Blake joined the conversation, his weathered face reflecting decades of difficult decisions. Because we've seen the alternative, Ambassador. We've watched our own species nearly destroy itself with lesser weapons. We've learned that the only way to survive ultimate power is to never use it. But that's not the real answer, Torres added quietly. The real answer is fear. Crix's sensory organs focused intently on the human diplomat. Fear? Of what? Of ourselves, Torres replied. We fear what we might become if we ever truly unleash our capabilities. We fear the galaxy we would create if we imposed our will through force. Most of all, we fear the day when someone else develops weapons like ours, but lacks our restraint. The implications struck Crix like a physical blow. Humanity's ultimate strategy wasn't just about preventing current wars. It was about establishing a precedent for how ultimate power should be handled when other species inevitably developed similar capabilities. You're preparing the galaxy for what comes next, he realized. When other species develop planet-killing weapons and instant transportation, they'll have humanity's example of restraint to follow. Or to reject, Blake said grimly. That's the gamble we're taking. By demonstrating that ultimate power can coexist with ultimate responsibility, we hope to establish a standard. But there's no guarantee future species will follow our example. Torres placed a gentle hand on Crix's chitinous shoulder. That's why we need the Council, Ambassador. Not to control us, but to hold us accountable. And when other species develop capabilities like ours, they'll need the same oversight. As the human delegation prepared to depart, Crix completed his mental assessment. Humanity represented something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that had achieved ultimate military superiority and chosen to remain subordinate to galactic law. They had solved the ancient paradox of power, how to possess it without being corrupted by it. But perhaps more importantly, they had established a template for the future. When the next species developed world-ending weapons, when quantum entanglement, technology spread throughout the galaxy, when every civilization eventually faced the choice between ultimate power and ultimate responsibility, humanity's example would stand as proof that the right choice was possible. The observation deck emptied slowly, representatives returning to their homeworlds to report on the day's revelations. But the conversations that began today would continue for generations. Debates about power and responsibility, strength and restraint, the right to possess ultimate weapons and the wisdom never to use them. Crix remained alone on the deck, staring out at the debris field that had once been Kepler 442b. In a few hours, as Admiral Blake had promised, the artificial black hole would evaporate and the gravitational distortion would fade. But the demonstration's impact would endure forever. A reminder that somewhere in the galaxy, a species possessed the power to unmake planets and chose instead to preserve them. For the first time in his career as a military assessor, Crix felt hope for the future of galactic civilization. Not because humanity was too powerful to challenge, but because they had proven that power and wisdom could coexist. They had shown that the ultimate weapon was not the ability to destroy, but the strength to choose not to. As he began composing his final report, Crix reflected on humanity's most profound achievement. They had not just developed the ultimate deterrent, they had become the ultimate example of what galactic civilization could aspire to be. A species so confident in their strength that they could afford to be gentle, so secure in their power that they could choose to be peaceful. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their planet-killing technology, or their impenetrable defenses, or their instantaneous mobility. It was their unwavering commitment to use none of it, unless absolutely necessary. They had mastered the hardest lesson in the galaxy, that true strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to protect. The galaxy would never be the same. And perhaps, Crix thought, as he transmitted his report to military commands throughout 47 star systems, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. End of story.